So, today's story is about one of the most famous potentially paranormal events of all. Except almost no Westerns have heard of it because it happened in China. But before we get into the story, if you have a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in a story format, then you have come to the right place because that's all we and we upload it almost daily. So if that's of interest to you, please put the like button. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our uploads. Okay, then let's get into today's story. Late on the evening of July 27, 1977, a 21-year-old farmer named Hang Yano walked down a wide dusty road in the little farming village of Bi, located in northern China. It had been a very hard day on the rice farm where Hang worked because they were all preparing for the autumn harvest. But even though Hang was totally exhausted and worn down as he walked down this road, he was whistling an upbeat tune because for the first time in a long time, Hang was actually excited about the future. Hank had grown up in a poor family and he hadn't even finished elementary school. He still lived with his parents in a tiny house, and basically every day of his life was the same. He got up at sunrise, he walked to work, he worked all day until he barely could even stand, and then he would walk home and he would go to bed. But the reason Hank was now feeling kind of excited about his future was because he had just gotten engaged to a beautiful girl in a neighboring village, and their plan was to get married after the autumn harvest. Hank was already hard at work, literally building them a house that they could move into after they got married. And in fact, on this particular night, that was where Hank was going. He was going to the property where he was in the middle of building this house. And he was going there not to work on the house anymore, but really just to admire his property because, again, he was just so excited about the future. Hank turned the corner and his beautiful half constructed home came into the foundation, the walls, and the ceiling were all complete. All he had left to do was put in the windows and the doors. And so Hank walked up and ran his hand over the beautiful brick he had laid around outside of the property. Brick was not cheap. He had worked extra hours to afford this, so he was just so proud of it. And he ran his hand over it. And then he kind of stepped back and kind of imagined the house when it was all done. And then, when he felt satisfied that he had seen enough, he just kind of nodded and turned and just continued walking back towards his home, his parents' home, which was only a few minutes away. When Hen got to his home, he went inside, and his mom already had a meal made for him. It was just some rice and veggies, and so Hank sat down and began eating. And then his parents came over and they began chatting. And then, of course, the conversation shifted to Hank's upcoming marriage because that's basically all Hank ever wanted to talk about. And then, by about 10 p.m., Hank was so tired that he crawled into his bed and he fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, when Hank's parents woke up, they discovered that Hank was not in his bed. Now, this was not totally unusual because they knew their son was a really hard worker, and it wasn't unusual for him to wake up really, really early to head out to the farm to begin his work. But a little while later, the workers at the rice farm were Hank work. They saw Hank had not come to work. And because that was so out of character for him, one of the workers actually walked to Hank's parents' home to see if he was okay. And when Hank's mother found out her son had not shown up to work, she was really worried. But she told his worker, "Oh, you know my son must have gone to the house he is building. You know, go over there and see if he's there." But the worker from the rice farm went to Hank's property he was building, and nobody was there. And so when he come back and told Hank's mother this, It sent her into a total panic because, really, for her, this was completely out of character for her. He would never miss work. He would never just disappear. Something was wrong. So Hank's mother sent this nice farm worker to go find her husband and tell him what was going on with him. In the meantime, Hank's mother just walked outside and began going door to door, asking neighbors if they knew where her son was and if they wouldn't mind coming out and helping her look. Now, at this time, the village of Bia was a relatively small place where all the residents knew each other. So it did not take long for the news of Hang being missing to spread all across Bia. And the community really came out in force to go look for him. By the afternoon, there were people on bikes riding all around, calling out for Hang. People were going to neighboring villages to see if he was there. Another group of villagers went to Hank's fiancée home and they spoke to her, but she had no idea where Hank was. So, by about early afternoon, when so many people couldn't find any leads to where Hank had gone, it became clear that nobody had a clue what happened to him. Bia, at the time, was incredibly isolated. This was a small town where most of the people didn't have phones, they didn't have cars, they rode their bikes everywhere, and there were no roads that connected Bia to any other place. Basically, if you lived in a Bia at the time, there was a finite number of places you could go. And all these people that had gone out looking for Hang had searched all those places, and Hang just was not there. They discovered his bike was still leaning up against his parents' house, and his work clothes, which he wore basically every single day, were still folded up neatly inside his room. So wherever Hank was, he was on foot, and he was still in his pajamas. That night, Hank's parents wouldn't contact the village committee, which was basically like the governing body of Forbia. And the village committee decided that this was serious enough because, again, they are thinking, this is impossible. Where is this guy? So they decided to contact the police. But when the police got this call, they did not launch an investigation right away because they had limited resources. And there was no sign of foul play. It was very weird that Hang was missing, but he was an adult. And if he wanted to go vanish somewhere, it was kind of like, okay, an adult, you can do that. So Hank's family and the rest of the Bia villagers were forced to just kind of wait and see if Hank came back. But over the next few days, Hank did not come back, and there was still no new information about what might have happened to him. Early on the morning of August 5th, 8 days after Hank went missing, and still by this point there is no sign of him, the deputy director of the Bia village committee had come running up the road to Hank's parents' house and knocked on the door. When the door opened up, it was Hank's father, and the deputy director handed him a telegram he had just gotten and said, "Read it." So Hank's father took the telegram and began reading it. And as he did, his eyes went wide, and then, when he was done, he looked up and he was just so confused. The telegram had been sent 8 days earlier at around 9 a.m. on July 28th. So basically, right around the time that Hank's family discovered he was missing, but for whatever reason, the telegram had been very delayed. And so they were just receiving this telegram now, 8 days later. And the contents of this telegram made no sense. It said that just 9 hours after Hank had fallen asleep in his parents' home, he was discovered laying on the sidewalk in the middle of the bustling city called Nanjing, located 600 miles to the south of Bia. Now, the reason Hank's father and the deputy director were so confused by this telegram was that this was impossible. Remember, Hank does not have a car, so the only way he could get around was on foot or on his bike. And we know he left his bike by his house, so he's on foot and very likely in his pajamas. And what? He's going to go 600 miles. Even if he walked the 30 miles to the nearest train station, 9 hours because that's how much time it took from falling asleep of being discovered in the city, is not enough time to go the remaining 570 miles of Nanjing. So Hank's father and the deputy director they talked about this, and they both decided that this just can't be true. Clearly, somebody has mistaken some other person for Hanks because he cannot possibly be all the way in Nanjing. Now, this telegram said that Hank was being held in a deportation center in Shanghai. And so Hank's father and the deputy director decided they would send a telegram back to the sender at this deportation center and tell them, hey, if this really is Hank, he should have a very specific birthmark on his birth. And so when they sent this telegram off, they fully accepted to get one back that said, oops, our mistake, it wasn't him. But they got a reply relatively quickly and it said, oh yeah, he's got that, each birthmark. It's definitely Han, but he's very confused. He doesn't really know what's going on. So somebody from your village has to go get him. Hank arrived back home in the middle of August, about 2 weeks after he had gone missing. And as soon as he got there, his fiancée and his parents were so happy to see him. Pretty soon, a steady stream of friends, neighbors, and other family members began coming to Hank's house to talk to him, to hear his story, to hear about what happened. But Hank really didn't understand what had happened to him. So mostly he just didn't answer any question he got asked. He just kind of kept his head down and just keep saying, I don't know. I don't know what happened. And then, really, when his family pressed him and said, you know, you have got to tell us. This is so crazy what happened. He would say, look, like I'm going to tell you what happened, but I don't even know if can believe the things I'm going to tell you. And so Hanks would say all he could remember was he went to bed in his own bed in the and then the next morning he woke up and he was laying on the sidewalk. And when he opened his eyes, he saw there was this big swimming pool. And then near it was a sign that said Nanjing. And so that was how he put together that he was in Nanjing. And then almost immediately, these two police officers wearing all white just kind of appeared out of nowhere and they walked up to him. They scooped him up, and without really saying anything to him, they brought him to the deportation center in Shanghai, which is a place where people who seem confused and mentally ill would be sent in order to help them get home. And that was it. That was Hank's entire story. Over the next few weeks, Hank kind of reintegrated back into his life. But things just were not the same. People were now scared of him. Kids literally ran away from him when they saw him because rumors were going around town that he himself, his body, was haunted or something. And so kids were scared of him, and other villagers would openly gossip about him right in front of him. Even his beloved fiancée admitted to feeling really uncomfortable around him now. And while all of this was obviously very upsetting for Hank, he did also understand why people were acting this way. This is a very anomalous this thing that happened to him. And he did not have a good explanation for this totally insane event that he was a part of. And so he just kind of got it. In fact, Hang himself was kind of terrified of himself. At night when he would go to bed, he would be terrified that the second he closed his eyes, he was going to be transported hundreds of thousands of miles away to some totally unknown place. And then maybe this time he wouldn't even be able to get back again. But as the days wore on, Hank continued to wake up in his own bed in Bia, which over time kind of made him feel more secure that whatever happened to him was a one time thing and it's not going to happen again.